I've had a lot of questions come up about, well, what does it actually mean to be an authentic man? Like, how do I powerfully be a man in the world, especially in this interesting time in our world where there's a huge energetic and many other ways shift in the relationship of how men and women show up in the world. There's something here. I can't be the only one having questions about this. Can't be the only one wondering, how do I show up in a way that contributes, that forwards what I really care about in the world? How do I feel like I belong as a man and not have to feel shame for being masculine?
Welcome to Questions Men Ask, the podcast for men who dare to question what is in search of what might be. Mold breakers, pioneers, wayfarers all, welcome. My name's John Symes. I'm a coach and author and a speaker here in California, and I'm joined by my co-host and good friend, Jared Archbold. This first episode is devoted to mapping out the journey and laying out the foundations of that journey, pointing at some of the spaces that we're going to go through as we inquire into what is it to be a man these days? How do we get here? How does it work for us? Is anything else possible? That's the journey we're starting. You're in exactly the right place. Let's go.
Welcome to the first episode of Questions Men Ask. We are so excited to have you here and joining us. John, why don't you tell us a little bit about this podcast?
Yeah, I want to say welcome as well. The mission of this podcast is it's really to help us as men meet this moment. And by that, I mean the challenging times that we're living in, times that are challenging personally and for the whole human family. We want to meet that moment. To meet that moment, we're clear that we want to make sure we as men are taking conscious choices about how we be men, that we're throwing off the shackles of outdated ways of thinking of masculinity, breaking the mold, finding a shape that works, that helps us flourish in our own lives and makes a contribution out into the wider world. So that's why we're here. We're delighted that you've joined us as listeners. To all the guys listening to us, thank you for being here. We're imagining you as pioneers. We're imagining you as mold breakers. We're imagining you as guys that don't quite fit into the old way of doing things and are already carving your own path. So we're here to help you think about questions that will support you defining who you're going to be moving forward. You know, and Jared, there are also lots of women listening. And one of the things that fascinates me is that women are themselves fascinated by us having this conversation. Yeah. Thank you to all the women who are a demand for men to show up in full, be flexible, share their emotions, be in true connection with you. Thank you for supporting the men who are prepared to break the mold and find new ways of being a man on this planet. So welcome to everybody listening.
Welcome. All right, well, let's hear a little bit about us. Who are we, these guys who are leading the journey that we're all on? So again, my name is Jared. I am 42 years old. I am blissfully married. I'm also blissfully not a parent. I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area. And I have spent the last 20 years obsessed with personal development, professional development, leadership, communication, the ways in which men and women, masculine and feminine, interact and support and contribute to each other. I currently work as a coach and mentor supporting men and couples in powerfully moving through the world, giving their beautiful gifts in beautiful ways. And the thing for me, why I'm here, why I'm really excited about this podcast is I've basically been living this podcast for years now in my own journey to being an authentic man, an authentic human. I've had a lot of questions come up about, well, what does it actually mean to be an authentic man? Like, how do I powerfully be a man in the world, especially in this interesting time in our world where there's a huge energetic and many other ways shift in the relationship of how men and women show up in the world and their roles. And so you'll hear this a bunch in this podcast, like the way my father's masculinity doesn't match for my life. That doesn't feel right. And we're going to be exploring that. And it was through my own exploration of that, which I'm still very much on, and in conversations with John, that I was like, there's something here. I can't be the only one having questions about this. I can't be the only one wondering, how do I show up in a way that contributes, that forwards what I really care about in the world? How do I feel like I belong as a man and not have to feel shame for being masculine? How can I find a way to actually be masculine and be a man that is a gift to the spaces I'm in and the places I go and the people I connect with? So that's why I'm here. How about you, John?
Well, I would sort of piggyback on that
Yeah.
because you've just named so many of the questions that are running through men's minds,
Yeah.
and you're an embodiment of the questioning man that we're reaching to. So thank you. I just want to highlight that piece, and then to introduce me, there are some parallels and there are some differences. I'm 20 years older than Jared. I'm a 62-year-old man. spent 40 years in the country I was born in, which is the UK. Moved to the California Bay Area 17 years ago with my wife Sand. I have two kids and two stepchildren. All of them are in their 30s, doing amazing things in different parts of the world. And in my career, gosh, I've done a range of things. What I'd like you to know perhaps would be useful. I've written a couple of books. The most recent of them was called Your Planet Needs You. Really a cry to see how we can all contribute to a world that works for everybody. I was fortunate enough to be featured in a movie called The Truth, which was really looking at what are the underlying truths that reach beneath the culture that we live in. And now I spend my time as an author, a teacher, and a speaker. So that's me. Here I am. And my inspiration for being here, I think it's really interesting. My wife, Sand, works with women. She works with women, helping them in, we could broadly say, personal development. And the quest of most women today, even in 2024, is to be able to claim their full voice and their full power in a world which makes that difficult for women. A world that's so skewed to the male way of thinking that women, even today, are trying to claim the power that the culture would keep them from. And having sat alongside Sanders, she's doing that for many years now, it seems to me that we men want to pick up the corresponding piece of work that says, what do we need to find? What do we need to do to help create a world in which the feminine perspective, feminine wisdom can be such, can help shape our future? That's what's missing in the world. That's what we need. What do we as men need to do to help create the circumstances for that to flourish? So that's why I'm here and excited that we're embarking on this podcast. What's the shape of the first season of the podcast? That's what I'm curious about now.
Yeah. And why is there a need for this conversation? I mean, we touched on a little bit in our introductions, but it's not just us. There is confusion in the culture, and it's confusion that our fathers didn't deal with, most likely. Definitely not our grandfathers. And questions about what's expected of us, what traits are okay for us to portray and to hold and express, and what is not okay for us to express. What are some of the stigmas around being anything other than okay, around being strong and like I have it all together, and what are the stigmas around seeking help from men? There's this pull between the traditional manhood masculine model of our fathers and this new model that is really wanting to emerge right now, and we're feeling that, and I hope you as a listener are feeling that to some degree. And my guess is that might have been what led you to listening to this podcast.
I think one of the interesting things, Jared, that defines a lot about how men think about themselves is the question about, will you change the baby's diaper?
Mm-hmm.
It's like yes or no, and that's perhaps one of the indicators. The way we've been thinking about it is that we as men have been poured into a shape, the shape of a man, and the shape we were poured into was set in the earliest years of our lives, yours, mine, all of the listeners here, and the shape was set by two primary forces: the culture that we're living in and the parenting that we got or the care that we got when we were very young. And so most of us were poured into a shape which is now looking quite old-fashioned. You referred to the shape of your father's masculinity or your grandfather's, the shape of the 20th century. And we're really clear that that shape isn't fit for today. There are some voices that think it is and are calling for that to come back. You said that, but we're really recognizing that shape has very significant limitations, and we're inviting us all as men to break out of that shape and find a new shape. We're not here to tell you what shape that would be. We're here to present some of the questions that might help you finding the right answer for yourself in that.
And we'll be taking some questions and answers as well, because it's questions been asked. What would this be if we didn't take some questions and answer them, or at least go deeper into the questions, because some of them we can't answer. And at the end of season 1, we really hope that you're more oriented to where we collectively as men are, and individually where you are as a man in your own expression and the way you walk. That you're clear on the mold and really sensing it around you, and that you have your own access to finding your own authentic expression for how you can contribute to a more beautiful world.
Yeah, that's great. And I was looking at the list of some of the topics that we might be discussing coming up, and I've got a few of them here, Jared. How is it that we as men fell out of love with our jobs?
Yeah.
Why is it that men's suicide rates are 4 times higher than for women? We're curious about what life was like before Me Too. Curious too about what life is like outside the American dream in cultures which aren't in the grip of consumerism and to the degree that we are here. We want to look at what's in it for men when women become equal. That's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
How is it that we win something from that rather than lose? We're moved by, and we'll dip more into the idea that women find men who are in this conversation to be sexy as and forgive my language, that's a direct quote. From some of the supportive women around us who say, bring on this podcast. We want guys in this conversation, and that there's nothing sexier. So I love that. Most of all, we'll be looking at how we identify the mold that we're in collectively and individually. We identify that mold and we find the motivation to want to break out of it. That's all that's ahead of us in season 1. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where we're headed, y'all. That's season 1. That's where we're going to be jumping into in the next few episodes. And we are so excited to have you along. Please continue joining. At the end of each episode, we're going to sum things up for you, so you really know, you're really clear on your takeaways. So this episode's takeaway, in a nutshell, it's men who do the work. Sexy as
Until the next time.
Thanks
for joining us.
Thanks.
That's all for this week. On the way out, I would love to invite you to subscribe to the podcast wherever you found it, and to pass the link along to any men you think might also want to be in this conversation. We will devote a future episode to the questions that you're asking us, and we'd love to hear your voices in that. If you read the show notes, you'll find a simple way that you can send in a question. We'll choose some of the most representative questions and feature those in that future episode. Last of all, to let you know that I host a monthly call for men. It's a free drop-in call hosted on Zoom. Men, wherever you are in the world, you can drop into that conversation and we will continue to talk about some of the questions that we're dealing with here on the podcast. Again, all the details for that are in the show notes, and I hope to see you there. Thank you.